In the clear, deep blue, less than 50 meters below the surface, the great, grand, majestic, unsinkable Bayesian lies silently on a Sicilian seabed. 2 months after it sank, quickly and unexpectedly, killing 7, including tech billionaire Mike Lynch, his 18-year-old daughter Hannah. She was due to start at Oxford University this month, and Morgan Stanley International Chief Jonathan Bloomer and his wife Judy. 2 months later, the Bayesian is still holding on to its secrets.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. We have learned a few things of late, and a theory about what may have happened has expanded slightly. In the footage of the Bayesian, this is from the Daily Mail, it can be seen lying on its starboard side, and bubbles from a diver's oxygen tank can be seen rising from the side. So what are the things that we've learned that expand, that take this narrative further? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. So firstly, if there was power, and it looks like there was power, why didn't they start the engines? Now, according to the article, video taken of the sunken Bayesian is said to show the watertight doors of the engine room were flooded at the stern. That's the rear side, which caused the yacht to rise up from the rear and then sink. Other footage of the yacht in the 16 minutes it took to sink also shows lights working, suggesting there was power, and again raising the question as to why the engines were not switched on. I do think there's a big clue. There seems to be consensus that it took 16 minutes for this huge craft to sink completely, to be visible one moment and then to be completely submerged. I think that is a very important clue. That's a fact that we know. Why did it take just 16 minutes, less than 20 minutes, to sink? And that brings us to the second point. And there's a reference to a wall of water. And I'm not sure if I understand it. According to the article, the footage was leaked to Italian investigative TV program Quarta Repubblica, and were broadcast just days after inquests opened into 4 of the 7 people who died. Quarta Repubblica said in its report that the bodies of those who died were found in the side visible on the clip. Now, the white line that can be seen is the one that runs around the hull of the Bayesian, and dark oblongs indicated by red circles are the cabin windows. Prosecutors investigating the sinking on August 19 off the coast of Porticello on the Italian island of Sicily believe the Bayesian was engulfed by a wall of water, which led to the sinking after it was hit by a freak storm. And those words ought to be emphasized in bold. Just pay attention to that. The Bayesian was engulfed by a wall of water. What does that mean, though? Did the water come from above? Was it something coming from a water spout or part of a downdraft, kind of a sudden tempest or squall? Basically, was it coming out of the sky, or did the water come from below, from the ocean? It's hard for me to imagine a wall of water coming from the ocean hits and sinks the Bayesian, but then not the Sir Robert Baden-Powell. Why does this wall of water not sink the smaller ship? And also, why do they not mention a wall of water? So I do think it's possible that if there was a water spout, and it seems like there's some witness testimony to corroborate that, or a severe downdraft but containing water, that water may have flooded from the sky. And in this sense, the Bayesian was, I think, a lot more vulnerable, giving its wide open decks than the Baden-Powell. Does that make sense? Now, going back to the article, leaked details from a preliminary report suggest the yacht went down after it was overwhelmed by water cascading over the main deck and down the spiral staircase to lower levels. Once again, did that water come from above or below? Back to the article, they are also examining whether the Bayesian's trademark 75-meter mast may have also been to blame, with it first tilting 45 degrees before it tilted a full 90 degrees and sinking. Now, it's not only the mast that's to blame, it's also the retractable keel. It's a weighted retractable keel that was retracted at the time, and that would have made it a lot more top heavy than it would have otherwise been, also more top heavy than the adjacent vessel. Back to the article, wind speeds were around 60 miles per hour at the time of the tragedy. Now, if you think about that, that's not a very strong wind. It's a strong wind, but it's not really a wind that you would think would sink a vessel just like that. And so, according to the preliminary report, it quotes investigators saying the Bayesian had the entire port side exposed to gusts and waves. With such a tall mast, the sail effect was decisive in making it tilt. Now, are you telling me in the history of this yacht's existence, it was never exposed to wind speeds of 60 miles per hour? It seems a little unlikely. Even so, a skilled captain would have known, should have known, how to mitigate this sort of situation. I mean, it didn't have to cause the vessel to sink if it was managed correctly, and this is where there's possible human error, human culpability in terms of this case. Going back to the article, investigators are still looking at human error, with a focus being on why the engines were not turned on and the bow of the yacht pointed to the wind to minimize the effects of the storm downburst. Now, I suppose one thing you could say that's a difference potentially between the two craft is if the one craft was compromised and there was nothing you could do, then I suppose you could say it was a different situation for the crew of the one craft versus the crew of the other craft. I'm still finding that a little bit of a hard sell. Anyway, this led the Bayesian drift 400 meters, tilt gradually, which allowed the seawater to tip in over the decks and down into the bowels of the vessel. Now, I'm still getting a sense that the media don't understand the way that this happened. I understand it that it tipped based on the stern going into the water. In other words, it first tipped from horizontal to vertical, not laterally, which is side to side. That's how I understand it. Then it sank stern first, that's the rear side first, nose in the air, then it went underwater, and that is when it turned side to side. That's how I understand it. Officials are also looking into why the Bayesian didn't turn her engines on, as did the nearby yacht Sir Baden-Powell, which survived the storm unscathed. That's, in a way, the critical difference here. I personally don't think you can explain this by saying, well, water rushed into the Bayesian, so you couldn't turn the engines on. Well, what were the crew doing to prevent the situation to begin with? Did they only realize that the craft was flooding when it was flooding? And so why was that the case? Were people sleeping? The crew members who were supposed to raise the alarm, did they raise the alarm? Also, were any people tested for being intoxicated at the time? Were any alcohol tests done on the crew immediately after this incident? I would hope so, but I would expect not. Now, another question is, were the engines not turned on because they couldn't be turned on, or was it too late anyway? If the latter, then we could be dealing with human error, and there could be consequences for some of the crew. Another thing that's frustrating is the bay doors that could have been open are on the side that is facing the seabed, and so you wouldn't be able to see them one way or the other. I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.